Hey there, course 1, lesson 17 is going to teach us about mixed numbers and fractions a little bit, especially the way that they appear on a number line. And if you're looking at this number line a little bit, especially this one where we start adding in fractions, which are parts of a whole number. So instead of just 1 to 2, we have the 1.5 here, or 0 to 1, we have a half shown. What does this start to remind you of? To me, it makes me think, the more tick marks and how you've got a bigger tick mark for bigger numbers, shorter tick marks for less. I think of a ruler, and that's what a lot of this is going to be like. It's going to be like thinking of rulers, building rulers, using rulers, and understanding that there are numbers between the counting numbers that you learned way back. Maybe last year is when you started learning, okay, there's numbers behind 0, negatives. We talked about that this year. Well, now it's good to remember that there's numbers on a number line between 0 and 1, like half or 1.5. Which one's the fraction? Which one's the mixed number? Half is a fraction because it's less than 1. 1.5 is a mixed number. Why? Because it contains a whole number like 1 and a fraction that's less than 1 put together. And mixed is kind of another way to think of the word put together. Mixed number. Call that a mixed number. And this one, of course, F-R-A-C-T-I-O-N, fraction. Okay? So fractions are going to be in between the holes. And then if we want to talk about any fraction that's more or less than 1, more than 1 or less than -1, I should say, we're going to need to attach fractions if we're going to go between the holes. So we count from 0 left or right, and the distance between consecutive integers might be something divided into a half, third, fourth, or fifth, or any fraction, okay? And if we want to look at example 1 at the bottom of this page here, and we want to say what mixed number is that on this ruler, number line, however you want to think about it. First of all, you got to look what two numbers is it between. It's between a 2 and a 3. So it's going to be 2 and something because it's not all the way up to 3. So we need a 2, and then we're going to tack on a fraction to the 2. 2 and a denominator goes on the bottom and a numerator goes on the top. The denominator tells me total spaces the way that they're divided. Okay, how many are there between 2 and 3? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, count the gaps. There's 5, which means this is divided, this number line divided into not just wholes, but fifths. Okay, now the top number tells me how many I've counted, right? And I go left to right on this, and I count, let's use a new color if we can. I count 1, 2, 3. 3 is my numerator. Answer 2 and 3/5. Okay? Let's see what they said here. Greater than 2 but less than 3. So point A represents a mixed number, which is a whole number plus a fraction, since it's between two whole numbers. To find it, we first notice that the segment from 2 to 3 has been divided into 5 segments, or fifths. The distance from 2 to point A crosses 3 of the 5 segments, so 3 of 5, 3/5. Why do we focus on the number of segments on the number line and not the number of vertical tick marks? Remember, we count spaces. We count number of segments or spaces, not tick marks, because otherwise you might count the 2 tick mark and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You get 6, right? There's 6 lines counting the 2 and the 3, but there's 5 spaces, and that's what we really need to be thinking about is the 5. Like I said, this is like an inch ruler where you don't just have 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, but to be more exact, you use things like 16ths, little tiny divider segments between the holes. So to estimate the length of this line segment in inches, you'd use your ruler, find the length, and get it as close to a 16th, which is probably pretty exact. It's about 3 inches long. And then you look what 16th is it closest to. They enlarge the use of a ruler on this. On your ruler, it might not have all these markings, how many, what each fraction is. It might just show the lines, which makes it a little harder. But if you're looking, why don't you take a quick peek at your ruler? Find 2 and 5, 3. Find 3. Can you find the big, longest tick right in the middle? That's because it's naming one half, the other half, and those are the biggest segments. So that's the half mark. Then find the next biggest, which should be the quarter marks. This, as you can imagine, will go in 4 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4-ish. Then you've got eighths, which are the next smallest. And finally, those little itty-bitty 16ths. So if you count up the segments between these smallest, you should always count 16 between your inches. I think that's the way most of your rulers are set up. If you can count 16 gaps on those little tiny lines, it means your ruler is divided into 16ths. And they're showing how they measure right up to here. So while that is the 14th, 16th, it doesn't show that because really 14 16ths reduced is it means it's our 7th eighth. And it was between 2 and 3, greater than 2, less than 3, so we say 2 and 7/8. That's how we apply this information out of measurements and rulers with their tick marks, 16ths of an inch and such. Very good practice. So you count up to the whole number that it's less than, then you tack on how many tick marks, remembering that the bottom tick mark, the denominator, names how many total ticks between each whole number, and the top is how many we've counted. So looking here, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 segments. Let me guess again. 1, 2, 3, 6. So they divided this into sixths. Your denominator on letter D is going to be a sixth, and then you count how many spots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is my numerator that gets me to the dot. Let's do just D through G, please. All right?